I am in studio now joined by some current and former Team 12 members who all were fortunate enough to have worked alongside Kent Dana. I've got Tram Mai, Mark Curtis, former 12 News anchor Lynn Sue Cooney, Catherine Anaya, and then also joining us through Zoom right now up in the high country is Janine Ford. Hi, Janine. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Nina.
Hi, Janine.
Everyone says hello. We'll start with you. You worked the 10 o'clock news with Kent Dana for many years. Tell us a little bit about that time working with him.
Well, following Joe's story, that's a little wow. Well, it was really amazing with him. I mean, he was the most incredible man I could ever dream of working with. And basically, I heard a song today. I was running to the store, I was coming back, and it's a song by Shinedown. It says, "In the end, the question will be asked, how did you love?" And Kent loved in a big way. He cared. He was humble. He gave so much more than he ever got back. And I just think it was his heart, his honesty, and that transcends that. The viewers always saw that in him. They could always see it, and they could feel, and they knew he was telling the truth, and he cared about them, especially through the things like Wednesday's Child. So I love you, Kent. I love you.
Yeah, Janine, it's a common theme you keep hearing is that he cared about people. His coworkers felt it, the viewers felt it. Catherine, you got to work alongside Kent as well. What do you think his legacy will be?
He was such a generous spirit. I had the last 5 years of his anchoring career, and it was very special to me. He was hilarious, but very professional, very self-deprecating, and he was so humble, and he cared truly about the story, like you've heard people say. He cared about this community. And I think that's why he was so beloved by this community, because what you saw on air was exactly what he was like off air. There was no pretension whatsoever with him. He was truly unique, one of a kind, and I'm so blessed to have had those 5 years with him, because we actually became very good friends off air, and he came at a place in my life where I needed that figure in my life, not just a friend, but he was like a brother and a father and a coworker, and he made going to work so enjoyable every single day.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, all of you guys used to work with him, but I know you all kept in touch with him well after he got off of the air. Lynn Sue, tell us some stories that maybe our viewers don't know about Kent. You worked with him, what, for 20?
Only the ones you can
20? Yeah, I was going to say, this is a family show.
No, not at all. That was the thing about Kent. He seemed approachable because he was approachable. And he was such a mentor to journalists that were up and coming. He was so supportive. I think I worked with him for, I don't know how many decades, a lot. And never, ever, even a tense word. He was just so gracious. There was never any power struggle. He was sharing. He loved the power of the written word. He would text me sometimes kind of late at night with a funny joke or something witty. He just was kind of a throwback to the diehard journalist, but somebody who didn't take journalism so seriously that he had to put a persona on. He was a real person, just like Catherine said. If you saw him on the air and felt like you knew him, you did know him, because it's exactly who he was.
And he was generous.
Don't you both think that he was meant to be in Phoenix?
Yes.
He could have probably worked anywhere he wanted to work because he was just so solid as a journalist. But this was his home, and it was a unique experience for him to be able to broadcast in the state and in the town that he grew up in and loved so much. And conversely, for the viewers, I think that was another reason they connected with him, because he was one of us.
He had roots here.
Yes.
And he was like our Walter Cronkite.
Totally.
Yeah, really.
People would watch the news before bed, and if Kent told them the world was going to be okay, they believed him.
Sure.
Because he was so comforting, and he really believed in the best in people. He was a special
One of the coolest
spirit.
things, I think, is to see his son, Joe Dana, right? Follow in his footsteps. Tram, I know you've worked with Joe a lot as well. I know.
Yeah, we all love Joe.
I know. And you know, what do you see in Joe that Kent possessed as well?
Well, it's just that fire for capital J journalism, right? You can see that with Kent. But My favorite Kent Dana memory was 19 years ago when I first came here in '03. It was like my first week. I just started. I was a little weekend anchor, came back from a flood, and I turned the corner into the newsroom, and I had not met Kent yet.
Who was
Or
the
you.
legend, right?
Yes, exactly. I
Yes.
had not met, the main anchors yet. And I turned the corner. He came up to me. He grabbed me by the shoulders and he said, "You did great."
Oh, I love that. Awesome.
I was like, "Oh my gosh." That meant the world to me as a new kid. And here's a main anchor. He just lifted me up. And that was the beauty about it. And I'll never forget it. And I felt so grateful. I felt a little appreciated at this new station, that somebody noticed and appreciated what I did. And he just had a beautiful way of welcoming people, making them feel supported, appreciated. He was so kind. And I'm telling you, that has stuck with me forever.
He was so encouraging, especially to the young reporters who were coming in. He was exactly the way you described him, but also, like you were saying, he was very supportive on the anchor desk.
Yes.
You always felt like it was equal give and take. And I posted something today about how, you develop this cadence with him and you understand the breaths you're going to take. And so when he needs you to jump in or he doesn't want you to jump in. Like you had this rhythm that you got into with him, and it's so unmatched.
Yeah,
in
we
my
call
opinion.
it our work husbands, right? Your co-anchor is like your work husband. Janine, we want to bring you in again because it kind of follows along the lines of what you were saying, where you felt like you actually got more from him than anything.
Absolutely. He was my mentor. He gave me great advice. But the biggest thing, and Lindsay, you and I were talking about this, the laughter. When I think of the moments and I think about being on the telecast set with Bill Denny and Bill Austin, okay, and then Bill Denny would usually start it. He would get Kent laughing, and we became known for these moments where he would just get his laugh. He had the best laugh ever.
He had
And
a
I have to
that
say,
was
he made me laugh
unmatched.
every day, and that was the important part too. I think. People dearly loved his sense of humor. Again, his heart, his compassion, but he was amazing. And I just love him for that. And I think he leaves just such a huge legacy with that. But the sense of humor, he was so fun.
Yeah, Mark, now you sit in that chair right after Kent, and was that kind of tough for you to be able to have to slide into that spot of someone who was so revered?
It's an impossible task to step into the shoes of a legend. The thing that, for me, because I started out in sports, I'll give you a sports analogy. The young quarterback comes along and they call that person the clipboard holder. You always see him on the sidelines with a clip. Well, now it's probably a tablet, but
Yeah, right.
and what their job is to observe and to learn from the established quarterback. And I was fortunate enough as the sports guy to hold the clipboard for Kent. And I can't imagine anyone better than Kent to learn from. I was a sponge and he was willing to give me all that I could take. And his instincts were great. His habits were great. His work ethic was great. And I owe so much to him.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I talked to Scene McLaughlin this morning, and he's sorry he couldn't be here. He's in Mexico on spring break with his kids. But, he talked about how difficult it was for him to step into Kent's shoes. And they go way back as well. And I said, Kent never felt that way. I mean, he was so willing to pass the baton to you, especially. If there was anybody, it was him at that time when he stepped in for Kent. And so, he just had this way of making you feel like, my shoes aren't that big.
Yeah.
You can do this.
Oh, yeah.
You're fantastic.
He was so humble, and I think half the time he was tickled that he even had a job in TV news. He couldn't believe he was pinching himself. But as we're sitting here listening to everyone talking, Janine, I just got this feeling, and I think maybe Kent gave it to us, that we're all back together, and he's here in spirit.
Yeah.
So we're a team again.
For sure. Yes, that's right. We're all together
What
again.
a great
sure.
way to remember and give wonderful stories and just share in this love.
Okay, but you guys didn't give us any dirt, though. Not one of you. I mean, come on. Janine, we usually rely on you for that.
I will tell you, we always teased about doing a mock newscast. And that would have been so funny. And he said maybe he would come in between Lindsay and I would be anchoring, and he'd be dancing in a toga, and we'd have to be having to read a biography or something to make it something like that. He was just too funny. We never had to do that show, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And I before we sign off, I just want to tell Janet and all of the kids and everyone in his family how sorry we are, how much we love all of you, and I know that Kent and his family would very much appreciate the outpouring of support that we've seen all over the valley today.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We loved him so much, and I am so grateful that his family shared him with all of us for as long as they did, because as we all know, this requires long hours and many, many days where you're here in the studio, and I'm just grateful that we had the opportunity to share part of his life.
He is a man I am proud to say that I loved.
Me too,
All my
very
life.
much.
I know we all did. And
you
we said it earlier, he's the great connector.
All right. Well, Janine, thanks so much for joining us from the High Country. You guys, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, coming back into the studio, and of course, I see you guys every day. We'll be right back after the break.
Bye, Janine.